Thanks, RJ.
I don't know that this actually does anything, so just hit this.
Arrow, okay. Yeah, talking about failure today, so something I definitely know a lot about. Looking forward to it. That's me Christmas morning. That's the last time I had long hair. Currently, I'm going through a bit of a midlife crisis. Turned 40 about a year and a half ago. It's also the first time I knew I wanted to be creative. I got a camera for Christmas, and since then, it's all I've ever wanted to do. I also want to talk about my first failure and how that actually got me into film school. If you guys remember in 7th grade, you take an aptitude test, you fill in all these little bubbles, and they place you in the correct classes. Everybody take that test? Yeah? I've always tried to figure out how stuff worked. So in 7th grade, I thought the test seemed kind of monotonous, so I filled in every single bubble on the chart, all 5, A, B, C, D, E. And about a week later, I got put in special classes for people that have significant learning disabilities. Yeah, that's not the reaction that my parents had, right? So my mom and dad sat me down and they said, son, if you focus and apply yourself, you can go to any college that you want to go to. You want to go to Harvard, you want to go to Yale, you want to go to Cambridge. If you bust your ass and you turn it around and you overcome these learning disabilities, we will make sure you can go wherever. And after about a week in these classes, I had to retake the test, and they actually put me in AP classes, so my parents kind of got duped, and I was able to go to Brooks Institute of Photography, which is in Santa Barbara, and I have a degree in underwater photography. So if I hadn't have sort of failed epically on that aptitude test, I don't think I would have convinced them to send me to school to be a photographer, to study underwater photography in Santa Barbara, but I got really lucky and they did, and that's how I went to Brooks Institute. I'll tell you a little bit about my company. Zenman's a digital agency. We've been around for 16 years. Our logo is actually orange, but you can see that on our website. I founded the company on my Buddhist principles. So I believe if you do the right things in life, if you put effort out, if you do right by the people that you work with, things are going to come back, karma. Everything works out in the end. And we've been really lucky in 16 years, things have. And I have failed more times than I feel like sharing with you. And I've gotten fired more times than I could probably count on my hands and toes. And if any of you ask me afterwards and I'm really comfortable, I'm going to tell a humiliating, embarrassing story of how I got fired from my dream job. Yeah, that's Zenman. So how many of you have failed? Does I see a raise of hands? No liars? Only a couple liars in here, right? Everybody's failed. You've been broken up with, you've gotten fired from jobs, you haven't gotten jobs. It just happens. I'm going to tell a story about how I failed when I got my dream job, and that was working with a photographer in Los Angeles, California. His name was Vic Huber. And at the time, in 1996, Vic was the top car photographer in the world. So we shot Ferrari, Land Rover, we shot Al Unser Jr. driving around racetracks for Team Marlboro. It was a really fun job. I applied for this job. They actually needed a props person on a job they were doing in Phoenix, Arizona. So I got on to do props. I worked with these guys for 2 days, and they were a blast. The shoot was amazing. They worked hard. They busted ass. But this was the agency that I wanted to work at. So I actually made the choice to not pay a credit card payment. I was a starving artist at the time, to take these cats out to play pool that night. So I picked them up at their hotel, took them out. We had a great time, and it worked. They called me a couple weeks later. They fired their 5th assistant. The photographer has a 1st, 2nd, depending how busy you are, 3rd, 4th, 5th. And they needed a 5th, so they called me and said, we need you to interview. I didn't want to tell them I lived in Phoenix, because that might be a deterrent to work 7 hours away, 6 hours away. So I drove out. I had an interview that took about 2 minutes. They said, great, go back to Phoenix, or we'll call you. They didn't know I was in Phoenix, and we'll tell you when we have work. So I drove back to Phoenix. There was a voicemail that says, hey, we've got a job, come back out. So I did this for about 3 months. I'd drive out, they'd have a 2-day job, a 2-week job, I'd stay there, and then I would drive back to Phoenix. Finally, they said, okay, we've got a position for you. You can come on as our 3rd. We always have 3 assistants on every shoot. It's a full-time gig, so move out here. So I moved to California. I was excited. I went to school in Santa Barbara. I hate Phoenix. It's where I was living for about a year. It's like hell. It's unbelievably hot. So I was very excited to go back to California. First day on my job as a full-time 3rd assistant, you have a little more responsibility. I was driving one of the grip trucks, one of the equipment trucks. So we wrap up literally the first shoot of myself as a full-time assistant. Everybody goes their separate ways. I've got to get gas in my truck. We're going to the next location for a shoot at 5 in the morning. I fill the truck up with gas, get on the 101, start chugging down, and it starts acting really funny. It starts chugging, it's really messing up, and all this white smoke starts pouring out of the back of the truck. And this isn't good, right? This is definitely not good. So I pull over. This is day 1 of my dream job. Park the truck at a hotel, call the studio, call the first assistant, let him know what happened, go upstairs to the hotel, and I'm just staring down from my 6th floor window at the truck, waiting for the person to come and see what was wrong with this truck. Finally, I fell asleep at like 2 in the morning. I woke up at 6, and I looked down, and the truck was just leaving. It was coming to maintenance the rental. So I ran down there, and there was this note in Sharpie that said, "Truck filled with fuel, not diesel." And that was the only thing. OF, right? This is really bad. So I sat there. I wait for the guy to come back. What am I going to do? How many of you guys have seen the Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan? Yeah? What did Kirk do in the Kobayashi Maru? Does anybody remember? He cheated. That's exactly right. There was no way out of this. So I waited with all the money I had in my pocket. When the guy got back, I said, "Look, man, microscopic truth, first day of my dream job, I just screwed up horribly. I cannot get fired. I just moved here for this. How much is it going to cost to make the problem with this truck not be truck filled with fuel, not diesel?" It was about $200, and I did not tell the people that I worked with till about 5 years after I'd moved on. I didn't work with anymore, and they said, "You know what? That's exactly what I would have done." So that was my first failure and how I really moved on. I'm going to give away some cool swag because I like cool swag, and there's no way to have this conversation without talking about the obvious cliches and failures. So who knows this guy's biggest failure, his first failure? Cool stuff, swag. What was his failure?
I was a sophomore on the varsity basketball team.
That's exactly right. He did not make the high school basketball team. I don't know how far I have with this, but take this.
Thank you.
You are welcome. The next one. This guy's failure. Pretty smart guy.
He wasn't good at math.
He wasn't good at math. He sort of is a gimme. Whoever raised his hand was going to win this one because there was a lot. He also couldn't read till he was 4. I'm sorry, he didn't speak till he was 4. He couldn't read till he was 7, and his teacher said that he was slow and inept to learning. Will you guys pass this back to him, please? Next one is Walt Disney. Does anybody know what Walt Disney's biggest failure was? Quinn, do you know? Anybody? Walt Disney was fired from a newspaper for having no imagination and lacking creativity. Yeah. So if you've ever been on Mr. Toad's Wild Ride, I seriously disagree with whoever fired Walt Disney because there's a lot of creativity there. What about this guy? Pretty good filmmaker. I like Jaws. Anybody know his rejection?
First team transfer.
I'm going to give it to you anyway because you raised your hand. But actually, what I was going for, he was rejected from film school multiple times, Steven Spielberg. But he didn't give up. And I think that's the theme is persevere. Keep going. So how do we learn from failure? We've been around for 16 years. We work with a lot of startups. We've seen a lot of train wrecks. And I'm going to share a couple experiences. First is a train wreck, and then I'm going to tell you how we avoid that in future projects. We worked on a project, and the names will remain nameless and what we did so that nobody that sees this online cries or sues me or anything like that. We did a project for teachers. It was about a 2-year engagement, and at the beginning of the project, we did a lot of research. We did focus groups with teachers, and the product owner on this project and myself thought we were going to change the world, not just here, but impoverished countries. We were going to make learning something that every child around the world could do. It would be engaging, parents would be engaged, we were going to raise social consciousness and awareness. It was going to be great. The problem was, once we started the project, we never showed it to teachers. So we worked for 1.5 years, and we really pushed this person to iterate and to fail fast and fail often. It's great that we did initial research and we understood the pain points, but we didn't continue to show them iterations and incrementally improve the product. So by the time we released what we thought was going to change the world, the startup was gone. And we failed tremendously. And we had to learn from that. Here's how you learn from that and how you avoid that. You have a great idea, wonderful. You go off and you build that product, and then you actually show it to the people that use it. So we're in Rhino, right? We've got to throw some hipsters in my presentation. We come up with the perfect skateboard, we get it in front of these guys, they give us their feedback. Yeah, maybe I can't do a kickflip unless I have grip tape all the way across the deck. So even though it looks cool, why don't we make it solid? And then we go back to the drawing board and we make incremental, iterative changes on these products. So from every small failure, we learn and we do a better job. Now I want to tell you about a project that we worked on where we failed fast, we failed often, and it was very successful. We worked with a local company a few years ago that was just starting up called Ibotta. And the guy that started this was a brilliant guy. His name's Brian Leach. He's an international trial attorney. He didn't know anything about coupons, but he had this idea about killing coupons. And he got funding for it. So we sat in his office many times with whiteboards. And to be honest with you, I didn't know anything about coupons. I'm good about user experience. I'm good at workflows. I understand design. I'm embarrassed to use coupons because I think the person behind me is getting pissed off I'm taking too long. So we needed to get feedback from actual users. And what we did is we created paper prototypes, very low fidelity, and we actually took those out. Their office is in Lodo, so we took them out on days that there were Rockies games, and we grabbed people off the street, not correlating Rockies patrons with couponers, but it just were people that were on the street. And we showed them the workflow. We had them touch a button, and as they went through the workflow, we showed them the next page, right, that they would have experienced. And we got very fast feedback, and we quickly understood a lot of things that we had no idea. And the end result was a very successful application that's continued to go on to get multiple rounds of funding, and still kind of pissed that Brian wouldn't pay me part of it in stock, but smart investors. Dealing with rejection. So I'm going to share with you another story about how I learned to deal with rejection. And I think it's critical with creatives because we're all kind of pussies, right? When people don't like our ideas, it hurts. We get emotionally attached to them. When I went to art school, and not to get on my soapbox and say all you kids had it so easy, right? But we didn't have Photoshop. When I went to school for photography, when we printed a print, we had to retouch the negative. We then had to print maybe 50 copies of this print, dodge, burn the actual paper and develop it for a certain amount of time. And then if there were scratches, you had to retouch it using a paintbrush and toner, right? This was a painstaking process. And every single week leading up to critiques, you would be doing this to the last minute. And they were very meticulous that you had to dry mount your work. So everything had to be perfect. Presentation was everything. So I had this print, it was perfect. Running to the last minute, I had to spray mount it, which is different, faster, much quicker. I spray mount my print, and we have it all up there, and everybody sits in the critique basically like this, and the teacher walks by, and he pulls off the boards, and he looks at them. And 90% of the people, basically, you fail, and you have to do it over again. And again, when I went to art school, not to say I walked 25 miles both ways in the snow, carrying my younger sibling on my back, but when I went to art school at Brooks, if you got a C, you failed. If you got a second C, you got expelled. That was it. You were gone. About 58 people started in my class, 12 people graduated. But when I got that degree, I got a job. You know, when I interviewed with Vic, it was a 2-minute interview. I went to Brooks, great, you know your stuff. When are you available? So I have this beautiful print up there, and it's spray mounted. I'm pretty nervous. And the teacher walks by, and he grabs my board, and he bends it, and the corner peels up. And he's like, oh, peels it back, ripped it in half, crumbled it up, threw it at me, and said, that sucks. You should really follow directions, right? Do it right. So we were taught very early on that you had to have thick skin. And the reason why this is really important in the creative industry, and why I've actually had to let designers go in the past, if you can't remove your emotional attachment from your work to actually hear your clients, you're not going to be able to collaborate with them successful. And your clients are the subject matter experts, right? We know user experience, we know design, we're great at it, but I don't know anything about coupons. I've never taught a classroom. So that engagement with your clients is absolutely critical to being successful. Sometimes clients have really shitty ideas, right? I want a pink kitten with a purple ribbon, and I want it to have blah, 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 red text on a pink background. You still have to hear your clients. And what we do at Zenman, when somebody has a ludicrous batshit idea, is we hear them, we show them exactly what they asked for, and then we show them what you're paying us a lot of money as experts that we would recommend, and I can articulate to you why what we're recommending is going to be more effective. I'm a huge fan of How to Win Friends and Influence People, the Dale Carnegie book. So by convincing the clients that it was their idea, I get their engagement, I get their buy-in, and 99% of the time, I get to do what I want to do, but it's because I heard them, and I listened, and I showed them what they asked for. So really, really important. How do we learn from our failures? We're very retrospective at Zenman, and we're retrospective on every single project, and we're retrospective as a company. So at the end of every project, when we wrap it up and we deploy it, we do a post-mortem meeting. We call it a retrospective. It's slightly more chipper than a post-mortem right after a project. But we sit there and everybody on the project, we have a smiley face, a puzzler face, and a frowny face on a whiteboard. And every single person takes a Post-it note and they put up something that went good, went bad, that they were confused about. And then we iterate on it in that meeting, and we actually change our processes so that it's sustainable. If we learn, we're just launching a new site for Lumineers, great local band. We learned on that site that in order to properly test e-commerce through their top spend store, we have to have a staging URL set up on their domain to make purchases and confirm that it's accurate. So in our retrospective meeting, we added that to, we use Basecamp, we're big advocates of sort of scalable, sustainable process. We just go ahead and add that right in our to-do list. So we've got a template of what our launch and our prep is, and we add that in, and now we've made that incremental change literally every single 2 weeks. We don't make a lot of significant changes, but we make small incremental changes. And then we do the same thing as a company. Every 2 weeks, we've got a 1-hour meeting where everybody from an intern that works there to literally everybody, what went wrong? Hey, we got scooters at work. I had fun. It rained and the roof leaked and my keyboard broke. Oh, that kind of sucks. What else? That just happened. Sorry, we had some torrential downpour. But we learn from our mistakes every single 2 weeks, and it's frequently enough that we don't forget about it. It's also frequently enough, and we don't make significant enough changes that you don't let the ship go for a little while, right? It's important to let those processes be in place and see how scalable they are, and if you need to tweak them at all. Confidence, right? So it's one thing to just fail, but failing with confidence, actually believing in yourself and trying. Does anybody know, and I will give you my last piece of swag, how many versions of the Dyson vacuum cleaner he tried before the prototype that actually worked? I'll round it to the 1,000 and I'll give it to you. How many? We'll give it to you. 5,126, right? Prototypes that he tried. I guarantee you he didn't think the 3,748 wasn't going to work. He believed in every single one of these. But it did take 5,127 tries before he created the vacuum that made him Sir James Dyson, right? So have confidence. And boldly go. And those of you that get this joke will get it. It's probably about 5% of you. I love George Takei because of the way he says awa and guacamole. But boldly go, right? George is a good representation of this. If any of you have ever seen a really good-looking woman or man walking with a near hideous partner, right, walking down the street, it could be that they're wealthy, they have a trust fund, but occasionally it's confidence. And I knew a guy like this that I would say bordered on hideous, and he dated really attractive women. But he had the confidence to go up and just have a conversation with them and to try, right? So Brian, my near hideous friend, always dated supermodels, and it baffled me, but it was because he had the confidence to talk to women. My wife was here. It took me 2 years to ask her out, so I'm a bit of I can say pussy, she took my 2-year-old away. And I literally waited until the last day that she was gonna leave her job at the coffee shop before I asked her out. So yeah, not as brave as Brian, but boldly go, George. And now I would love to have questions because I know I talk really fast, and any questions about failure, please share with me now. Oh, thank you. Yes?
What's your advice on getting a thick skin?
Getting a thick skin? It just takes time. I mean, for me, it was those critiques that really did it. It wasn't uncommon for people to cry in those critiques. I had a teacher once tell me, "You're not getting your money's worth," in my critique. And I cried in a lot of beer, but I didn't cry in class. But it's really just experience and being open to it. And I think if you're open to the fact that the people you're collaborating with, you have to be able to hear them in order to be successful. And trust that if you show them both options, if you embrace what we do and hear them, but also show them what you think is right, they always go with the choice that we present, as long as we've heard them. Yes?
Can you talk about, I guess, that balance of the, let's say, harsh critique of art school and your business with intern and your staff?
How we deal with that?
Yeah, do you bring that into your routine?
I am not as harsh as that. We have every Tuesday.
Just repeat the question.
Oh, yeah, sorry. The question was, how do we incorporate that sort of harsh critique into our day-to-day business life? I don't tear up people's work and throw it back at them. but I will give them very honest feedback. And we do it collaboratively, so the entire design team meets every Tuesday morning and every Thursday morning, and we present the work that they've been doing on. And most of what we do is digital, so we will involve a developer on each project as it pertains to them, because there might be elements of the creative that are going to impact what they're doing as far as the development. And we give honest feedback. And the way that I think we can do it more constructively is we give suggestions instead of just tearing it up and throwing it back to you. We'll give you, why don't you try this? Let's pull up these examples and look at how this worked. One of the things that we do to mitigate that is we do mood boards and wireframes and content before we actually ever start visual design. So we can eliminate a lot of that out front. But just being honest is the biggest point. Yes?
Not client work, but independent work. What's the fine line of knowing, okay, it's time to quit, move on, it's not working, or let's stick with it and persevere? What's that balancing sort of like the signs that say, okay?
That's an excellent question. The question was, how do you balance independent work when it's time, or client work when it's time to move on if it's working or if it's not working? One of my favorite sayings, and I'm really good at cliches, is if we have analytics, we'll trust that, or if we have numbers, we'll trust that data. If we have opinions, we'll just use mine, right? So you learn from the numbers. A big believer in A/B testing and continue to iterate on things. It's never done. We made a change on the Zenman site, and one of the things creative agencies do, you know, we design things that I want you guys to think is cool, right? And that's what my designers want. But as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I want a site that's going to convert leads. I want the phone to ring. I want people to email me. I want projects that are cool to come in the door. I want to get to the point that we can tell people, you know what, we don't want to do that project. It's not a good fit for us. We're plenty busy with this work that we love to do. And we iterated on our site by just changing a small call to action. We work with a local company. They're kick-ass ad vision. They do our inbound marketing. And based on their recommendations and us hearing them, we just added a couple buttons. And our conversion rate went from 0.25% to 2.25%, and we've got between 3,500 and 4,000 hits a month. So a huge change in what we did based on a very minor iterative tweak. And it was because we looked at the numbers. We saw our traffic going up, but we didn't see our leads going up, so we dug into the details. Did I answer your question? No? Well, we're moving on anyway, so I can always get I'll think about that and come back. Okay.
I was wondering how you transition from kind of
That's a tough transition, and a lot of people actually can't make it. We've had artists that even struggled from art school and being a creative to working on actual client work, right? Where you're not just doing the Vision skateboard deck redesign because you think that's cool. Now I'm selling asbestos abatement. You know, that's not as sexy, and something that we have done in the past. You're commercial artists, so I jokingly say, I'll do whatever you want. I'll wash your car if you pay me my hourly rate. So if you want to pay me $300 to wash your car for an hour, I'll wash your car. And I've been doing this for 16 years, and I do the stuff that I need to do for myself, my passions outside of work. Our best clients actually embrace the fact that we're creatives. Frank Bonanno is a great example of this. The first time I did a project with Frank from Mizuna, we had all these ideas, and we pitched it to him. And Frank said, do you know how to make a bouillabaisse from scratch? I responded, no. And he said, I don't know shit about websites, just make it fucking cool. And if you guys know Frank, right, that's Frank, he's from Jersey. But because he actually embraced our creativity, we do our best work. There's absolutely times where we don't want to show the work that we've done because the client involvement, they haven't embraced all our recommendations. They've made small changes that we think are going to make it less effective, and we just don't show it. But it's kind of that thick skin thing. You still have to do, I mean, there's a reason we all got into it. It's because we love this. And making websites to sell asbestos abatement is not going to be rewarding as cool as you make it. So I think you still have to fulfill those creative desires and outlets other ways. Did I answer that question okay? Okay, I'm still thinking about yours.
what would you say to someone that doesn't have like a safety net or like a fallback, and so doesn't feel like they can be allowed?
Allowed to be what?
They're not allowed to fail because they don't have anything to fall back on.
Not allowed to fail because you don't have anything to come back on. So that brought up a perfect point that I missed from my presentation that I wanted to bring up. So I play a lot of poker. I love to gamble, and one of my favorite poker sayings is scared money never wins, right? You have to have that confidence that you're going to succeed. If you sit down at a poker table and they buy in for the minimum every single time, they're gone pretty quick, right? Scared money doesn't win. You have to believe in your abilities and have confidence that you're going to succeed, and you're going to fail many times along the way, but you're not going to fail. You're just going to learn from that experience, and you're going to continue to grow and move on. We've gotten fired from jobs. You know, we've been around for 16 years. Almost all of our clients love us, but we've gotten fired. There's things that just aren't a good fit. The nice thing about what we do as creatives is it's not like you've got to go off and go through the entire, you know, post my resume on Monster again. Hopefully you've got a backlog of work and a pipeline. One of the challenges when I first started the business was when I was selling, I wasn't working, and then when I had a bunch of work to do, I wasn't selling. So I had this real cyclical cycle of busting my ass to get projects and then actually busting my ass to do those projects. It's just a lot of hard work, and you love it, so that's why you're going to keep doing it. Anybody else? Yes? That's an excellent question, and I think culture in our business is one of the things that really separates us and allows us to do that work. We create an environment that just breeds creativity. You know, from our team sort of zipping around our office on scooters. I've actually got a funhouse pinball machine in my office. The guys, you know, will take a break at lunch and play a little PlayStation, but we work really, really hard. And every single day at stand-up, we have those, not retrospective meetings, but we have a daily stand-up where everybody talks about the projects they're working on. We help collaboratively solve those. So kind of twofold, by creating an environment that just nurtures creativity and allows them to embrace taking risks, and then by also daily, and then in the design reviews, and then through our QA and QC when we're rolling stuff out, making sure that we've deployed a product that's up to our standards. There's no wrong answers in brainstorming, so just having the ability for people to throw stuff out there, because it might be a really sort of silly idea that's going to spark somebody else's idea that's going to be the next Dyson vacuum or iPhone. Anybody else? All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it.